Hey guys, and welcome back, it's Piotr from Book of Photos, and today I will show you how to make the matte effect in Affinity Photo for any photo. Let's begin.
Bokeh Photos.
So as we stated before, the matte effect. It looks pretty much like old analog cameras, analog films, and it's very simple to do. You will only have to use curves adjustment layer in Affinity, which pretty much is the curve tool. Any software snaps it for a mobile phone, iPhone, whatever software you're using, Affinity, Photoshop, Corel, whatever, everywhere there is a curve adjustment tool. And it looks like that. Here we click adjustment layers and we add curves. And this is it. And how we do the matte effect. Pretty much you probably, if you are watching this, you definitely heard about the S-curve. So let's do an S-curve. I usually go 1/4 here, 1/4 here, then I do something like that on that intersection and here. And obviously it is too much. It is matte, faded, muted, whatever, but it's an overkill. Let's go here to half and here to something in the middle maybe. Now let's pop up this a little bit and let's try to first make the proper effect, and then I will go through everything we do and why we are doing it. Because why do you want a matte effect? Look like, take a look at this. This is a perfect example that we would, for example, like to or try to change this photography. Like this is the regular version. It's pretty much a snapshot. I mean, it looks okay, but we would like to add the fine art effect, for example. Make everything a little bit muted, faded, like, you know, old analog cameras. So this is why we are doing this. So to make fine art photography. And let's try to simply tune it a little bit and let's see what can we do with that. This photo is very red, but we will remove reds later on. And I would say that this is pretty okay. Like this is before and this is the after. It's definitely muted, faded, have the matte effect on that. And this is pretty much what we want. And what we are doing on the curve. Let me go one by one after everything. In that part of the curve, we got all our dark colors, our blacks. Those two squares, I mean all that part of the histogram or of the graph is our midtones. It's not very dark, not very bright, it's somewhere in the middle tones, mid-tones, whatever you want to call them. Those are the highlights, so the brightest parts. So as you can see here, if we would, for example, add a bit more points to actually keep the curve unchanged in that section, if I would go and move this around, here you can see what changes. Only the brightest parts are really getting more and more white. As you can see on the histogram, the same goes for blacks. Here is our histogram. Let me get back. This is our curve as pretty much as original. Look at the histogram. When we are this moving up, we are adding white. We are pretty much moving everything to the right side of the histogram, which is here pretty much moving everything towards pure white. And if I, for example, do this, this pretty much adds the color to every other color. So if we had a regular graph like this, sorry, let me fix this. Okay, Control Z, yes, perfect. So look at this. This is our regular graph, right? And now we can see the separation between everything, because there's a lot more contrast simply added to everything. And the colors are being made totally black. And here everything is adding white because we are removing the blacks altogether. We are adding white, like those are the blacks, those are the whites. This is very simple, guys. So this is us going up here with that point, adding white to everything, which is adding the faded muted effect. This is the crucial part. Here we are lowering this down to add a little bit of contrast. So the blacks will be lifted up and the other parts of the dark shadows and blacks will be, like, look at that. Everything is white, washed off, it looks like shit. If I go a little bit here, this is the original, because here is the intersection with our original curve, and all the colors here on that part are being lowered down in tonality. And here we can make them brighter, but let's just simply remove that and operate on 4 points, for instance. So I would start with making those 4 points as an S-curve. This is our main idea for creating any matte photography. And additionally, just for the sake, I would add a point here in the middle, and then you can operate and go through that line. We can get darker here, we can get brighter here. And why brighter? Everything that is, if the curve is over our original curve, over this fine line, this straight line here, it's simply going to be brighter. There will be more contrast. Here everything is getting faded and, well, pretty much darker, because we are lowering the values of that graph here with all those values that are here. And why curve? Because this has to be very smooth when we are changing anything, so the colors won't be as, here is black, 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 then suddenly boom, white or yellow or whatever. Thanks to this, if I change this, go up, and this is different, goes the other way, there is the smooth effect of going and transitioning from one color to another. So this is like, this has to be there. If you really want a hard transition, you can always add more points like this, and then you won't have those issues. I mean, you will still, as you can see, have some, but in the end it will be okay. So this is the basics. Why would you like to do this? You can add contrast with this, as you can see right now. We are adding contrast pretty much. We can lower the contrast by bumping up the colors, so we don't have to use the contrast slider anymore. We can have the matte effect for fine art photography and fine art look. We can also mute colors, because if those blacks, we remove the contrast a little bit, everything is getting faded. It's simply increasing the blurriness of the photo. So everything that is sharp and have contrast, our eye will go there. So it will give us the clarity for our photography a lot more, and will just make the attention focus on the subject that we want to. So this is another example. And here, what we are doing here, this is pretty much lowering the whites. So the whites won't be white, they will be a little bit grayish, muted. So everything will be compressed a little bit, but it will have a nice faded matte look. So let's start with some examples. Okay guys, so the first example, as you can see, simple flower photography. Let us add the curves adjustment layer and make the S-curve. Something like that. As you can see, this is pretty much all we need. This is before, and this is the after. It did add contrast, it did add the faded look here. So as you can see, this is before. Here, this is a little bit busy, the background, and when we are fading this, it's a lot less interesting. So your attention can actually go, and the pinpoint will be straight to the flowers we want to present in the end. So let's lower down the highlights a little bit, at least, so it will still look good. Okay, this is maybe too much faded, because there is just simply not enough color popping up. This is, of course, my humble opinion. Or maybe just a little bit to add this pop even harder. So we are fading and muting the blacks here, the shadows, and we are also adding a little bit of pop to the colors, to the highlights. It's pretty much like adding vibrance in the end. So the S-curves, and in general curves, are like the contrast slider, vibrance slider, saturation slider, highlights, shadow slider, everything in one pretty much, because it still either boosts the color or adds whites. So there you have it. This is before, and this is the after. Of course, we can still lower it down a little bit, something like that. Make it a little bit darker in those parts. This is still below light, so everything is below the original curve. And let's experiment. I would say this looks pretty awesome. So this is before, and this is the after. Which one you like? Leave me a comment. So, another example. This is a basic snapshot from a city. Curves, and let's pump up and lower here. And as you can see, just with those 2 points, the blacks the blacks and pretty much dark parts of the image is that what where we will see our mated faded look effect. We'll have the like our eyes straight. I can see this right here straight out of the bat, right? Okay, everything gets darker, but this here on the bottom line here and here, this is what actually tells me that yeah, I like don't really care about that because it's so faded, but so I will focus my main attention on the subject. And of course this is pumping our colors maybe a little bit too much. Let's try to lower it down, fix this here, and there we have it. This is before, this is the after. Maybe it's not faded because it's very bright photography, but here I want you to just simply look at that. If we add this here, this for example too much because the color is going through some grayish color without any texture, without anything, just too much. So remember to keep an eye on that. And there you have it. Let's remove that. And I would say we're golden pretty much. Maybe it's not much, but it's definitely visible here. The black and shadow parts, dark parts will always look the best. So, another example. Here we have just this is actually a very good photo for that. So we have a lot of shadows all around. We have blacks here, and we have a very bright highlight subject in the middle. So let's try and add the adjustment layer with the curves, and look at this. I pump this up. Everything in the whole image pumps up a little bit, but shadows and darks are doing a lot more than the whites. And now I'm lowering this to at least the level of that curve, more or less. Usually it all depends. And look at that. This is the basic the easiest way how you can make the matte effect look awesome. There you have it. And if we lower down the highlights, look, the flower and the surroundings aren't that bright. It's a very faded, matte, flat, pretty much a flat picture, more or less. But the faded effect with additional highlights that we are adding right now, but by moving the second point in the brightest areas here, are giving us that contrast that really pops up the photo. So this, of course, I wouldn't want, for example, I don't want those highlights here, so I will be very careful with that. And we're gonna have something like that. This is before, and this is the after. It does look a little bit different, right? Additionally, you can desaturate a little bit the whole photo, so it will have additionally that fine art look, if you like it. And there you have it. Let's just simply desaturate. And how can we desaturate that? Pretty much just simple slider, and let's see how it looks. Saturation. A little bit less. Totally different thing, right? And there you have it. So, another example. Now, this is a very particular photo because there is total black here and a lot of silver stuff, as you can see here, for instance, and the cufflinks. And as this will work, let me boost up the blacks and add this contrast right here. Look at the cufflinks in here. Those silver reflections are a lot more transparent, I would say. They're a lot smoother in the end. Let's lower those highlights and boost the contrast here. And this is before, and this is the after. It does add a little bit of nice vignette, for example, here in those shadow areas. The transition is a lot more, I would say, smoother. It looks simply a lot delicate, I would say. It's subtle. It does add this faded matte look. It's really, really nice. I, for example, love it, so feel free to copy it and see the cufflinks. Now, they are not that much interesting, but here they are looking a lot more abstract. This is a lot more fun. So there you have it. So let's see another example. Okay, so this is simple product photography, right? Nothing fancy, but let's add the curves adjustment layer. This is the last example, really, guys. I won't bore you more. Let's just create the S-curve. So this is before and this is the after, but I would like to go a little bit over the top here. And you see, this is black, pretty much black, right? And if you overdo here, it will be gray. We don't want this gray. I mean, we would like this to be partially black, partially not. The most important part here is to not overdo it. Remember that any adjustment should be subtle. The person that actually looks at the photo shouldn't be able to tell straight away what did you do to the photography. They should be able to like feel that that the photo is nice, not what you actually did to that. So this is the effect you used. So remember, as always, less is more. Don't overdo it. Of course, if you want to, go ahead. If you like it, perfect. But in the end, you might think about this. This is just for you to think. Leave me a comment. What are your thoughts on that subject? But I'm trying to lower down the highlights and make this a little bit more pop. So this is before and this is the after. Well, the effect is totally different, right? Let's go a little bit hardcore on that maybe. And don't care about this grayish stuff here. Yeah, totally different story, right? You can see a lot of Instagram stuff also using that technique, and it's as simple as possible. Remember, every application you will be ever using to edit photos, there is probably a curve adjustment layer tool, something like that there, and that's it. If you learn this, 99% of photos you can do like that, for example, and you're golden because the style, the colors are awesome. Additionally, you can also use the curve adjustment layer for colors, like for example here. This is the green curve, so we are only using the green color for the whole photography. And as you can see now, right now, I'm removing the green from the image completely. So this is going to be purple and the rest is pretty much red because this is the dominating color, right? And here we can add the green, so everything is a lot more greener. And we are only using this in our shadows, in our blacks. So this, as you can see, is a lot less green than here, because this is totally black, and those blacks here on that side of the histogram, it's pretty much adding the color there. So this is the pretty much basics how the curves adjustment works. It's really not that hardcore. You just need to sit on your ass, make a couple of photos, just click on that to have the feel what it does. You don't have to know it technically, you just have to know where to click and what will be the effect. That's the bottom line. Okay, so maybe another example, a simple sunrise landscape photography. Let's add the curve adjustment layer and let's see if the effect will be here any awesome. So the bottom line is that we would like this blacks here, the beach, to be faded muted gray, something like that. Yes, exactly. So this is before, this is the after, but as you can see, we added on the bottom here, we add the faded meta effect. It works. But here we actually are adding contrast because this is over our baseline. So we should, in general, lower this down a little bit, or at least keep it near the curve. Try to lower those highlights, not too much because they are actually going green. Okay, this is too much. So as you can see, look how colors are changing. Yellowish, greenish. But we can fade this a little bit like that. And we're golden. And before and after. The question is, what do you like more and why? I, for example, like this because when you print stuff like that, this faded look, those faded blacks, sorry, this looks awesome on a nice, for example, solution paper or some Barita paper. It looks just simply nice with this hardcore blackness, I would say. Colors obviously are awesome, but in contrast with those blacks, it looks very, very nice. I mean, I like it. If you like it, leave me a comment. That's the bottom line. Okay, guys, so let's fast just do a simple recap. You can use this for landscape photography, the matte effect, faded look, whatever. Product photography, definitely. This is before, this is the after. It's very subtle, but it's there. People won't notice. The less is more, remember. Here, this is also great. Let's remove the saturation effect also. And this is only our curves adjustment layer. not faded, matte faded look. Pretty, I mean, it does make a difference, right? Like here, this is pretty much a simple snapshot, more or less. You can think about this like that. But if you add this, it's only, wow, like, what does a faded look, you know, like a scanned analog file from an old camera. So there's that. You can do, of course, city snapshot, but this, in my opinion, doesn't work that good. So I wanted to show you that not always it's the best idea. You can use it, but don't overuse it, and don't use it definitely always, because it always know what you're going for and why you are doing this. Like, for example, here, I would use this so I can focus the attention of someone that is looking at the photography. So everything around will be faded because it's not interesting. It's not the subject anyway. Of course, I am using a very shallow depth of field anyway, but still, to increase that effect, I can use something like that. Fine art photography, matte effect, definitely. This is maybe a little bit overdone. Let's remove this a little bit. So it will not be that much faded, or at least not in all the parts, but this is before and it's the after. Well, there is definitely a difference, right? So there you have it. And here you can also play with the colors. So for product photography, if you want to make this feel of, for example, golden hour sun, if everything is a little bit faded, because fading the photo will make it less contrasty, so it will feel more at ease. Not that contrast, harsh light. It's pretty much hardcore, as you can see. Right now it's very detailed, very sharp. It's like screaming, I would say. Now it's a little bit more easier to consume, let's say like that. So guys, this is it. This is how you can do a matte, faded, muted effect on your photographies. Every tool you will use, there is always something like the curves adjustment tool. Use it, have fun with this, and there you have it. Thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.